somewhere in my early career, about 15 years back, I still remember 18 years back, I had a boss, right? This guy never wanted to hear no.
Yeah.
What will you do with him?
We've all had
So what happened? What happened? I was on my personal leave, traveling somewhere, and he called me back. And I have to come back because he cannot hear no from me. And I remember I went for a movie with my family. I came back in half the movie to attend his meeting, right? By saying an S, right? So if you have a boss who doesn't give a space for you to say a no, then it has to be always a yes from you.
Still the case.
And when you are more unsecured about your career and promotions, or when you are working on a probation, and when you are stuck with such boss, I think whether you mean it or not, it's always an yes, right? Yeah.
Still the case.
No, I think it's a
Generation gap is today. I mean, my boss who may listen, we cannot say no to him, and he may listen and he'll agree to it. But I cannot say my juniors will not gonna say yes for everything. That's the gap we live in, and we have accepted that.
Juniors are watching this. Good job.
But there is one more element to it when we say about the need to say no or not. It's about the fact that is the request genuine, or is the request somebody's dumping his or her work on you, and you have to kind of differentiate between the two. Sometimes when the request is genuine, you still try to accommodate it, and I still feel I think it's good to accommodate that, because if somebody really needs your help at that point in time, and then you kind of work around how you can support. But many times it happens that somebody doesn't want to do his or her job, just put it on you and say, Amit, why don't you do it? Why should I? Then you have to put it back. Sometimes you have to be very blunt, saying, I don't think so, it's my job. You better do it. And then if something is there, I'm there to get into it. But as of now, you have to. Sometimes you have to be very blunt, especially when somebody is dumping his or her work on
you understand people very well. After interaction with these people, this guy is like passing the ball to your court only. So let's be clear and transparent.
No, as a system, we also, meaning as leaders, I think we need to institutionalize what this is for, because the future generations are going to be very different. I think a lot of what we are answering for may not exist in its current form, but the leaders who've come from parts of what we are talking exist, because even in my teams across the layers, there'll be many people, okay, this guy has come from college, but he'll expect him to come in a certain way, come on a particular time. I mean, timing is still okay if the meeting is set on a particular time, but there are very other habits, or there are other behavior patterns that if you do not adopt to, you are going to be lagging behind, because you will not get the productivity out of it.
AI will do it.
AI is one thing, but yeah. So it's a very simple, I'll take an example of, I do a lot of hiring from campuses also. We always do something called as a SQL test, and many of you, I'm from a tech background for those who are not. I'm just taking a simple example. A SQL test has been going on for ever since I've probably even when I, but nowadays I'm expecting people to actually do whatever open book or use AI or SQL, but then explain it to you. That difference is very, if the person who's interviewing, if he's expecting him or her to know more than what you are doing, I'm saying that's not necessary. The AI or Google will give it to you. And if you are interviewing for your competency versus the other competency, it will never go to work. So those are things that are still not completely changing.
So coming back to the other side of it, let's assume you have a team and the team is reporting to you and you have employees reporting to you. There it becomes a little tricky. For example, as a MBA faculty, right, to teachers for business school students, we many times make this judgment, right? If a student is resisting to do something, and if the student is saying a no, we see it as non-cooperative, and we see it as intention to learn is very poor, and he doesn't have an ability to stretch himself, right? And we question on his learning attitude, right? So this is something what we use to judge, right? As you come, many times what happens when you are dealing with a large number of students, it's quite difficult for us to even differentiate a genuine and non-genuine no's, right? And we run into these challenges. And there are occasions where sometimes there may be genuine cases of no, but still we would have not accommodated that, right? Because we think that as something like there is an issue of learning attitude, right? So how do you tackle this when your own team folks come and say no to you, and how do you differentiate this and accommodate this?
This is very good question. Thank you so much. And this is not a problem which we are facing once in a blue moon. This problem is very, very common. Every day you will experience. What we do, after, you know the people very well. After spending some time, you can understand strength and weaknesses. If you do the SWOT analysis of all people, you can understand the attitude, the overall behavior of that candidate also. We know very well some peoples which are genuinely doing well, and if sometimes they are saying no, we accept them very, very wholeheartedly. The reason being, we know this guy, after spending so much time with us, the kind of attitude he has shown in the past, and now today if he is saying no, there must be something which is bothering him. That's why he's saying no. So that time, rather than reacting and say, boss, it is not acceptable to me and I'm a more authoritative leader or something like that, doesn't make sense. You need to spend time with him and understand what is missing, why you are thinking in that direction. Is this something related to your existing load which is not yet overcome, or your competency related to that topic is not there? That's few probing question basis you can understand.
I think what you also need to overcome, I'll just build on what you just said. The contextualizing is very, very important to understand the entire context behind why the person is saying no. But it's also got to do with your own bias, right? As in, you got to be very, very careful about that bit of it. A high performer coming and saying no versus an average performer coming and saying no, you would have that kind of bias, and then that ability to listen to that context would be very, very different with a very colored kind of a thing. So that you got to be careful about in order to understand that entire why the person is saying no, right?
And I think what the way Vikas said, it's very contextual. It has to be contextualized in terms of repeat behavior, in terms of attitude, in terms of skills. So for me, I think for people who and that includes my bias as well, some ways. If I see people attitudinally coming and saying no, then I follow a different method with them versus people who might be lacking in skills or might be lacking in competencies. The first bucket, I try to be very direct with them. I try to give my feedback instantly, and then I ask them what is it that they need to do to improve if they need to. And that the message that goes out therefore is that from my perspective as leader, I do feel that you need to change or you need to improve, and therefore if you come up with some suggestions, I am willing to help you if there's a need, so that onus goes back to that person. The second category, which is skill competency issue, there we have standardized approaches which we take. For example, we will put this person into a group or cohort where skill and competencies could be improved significantly. So the person gets an opportunity to work with people who know far more than what that person knows, and therefore they learn, and sometimes the ramp up is far faster, and people come back and also appreciate the fact that organization has helped them in improving and putting them into a place where they can contribute far better and therefore have a career progression.
As leaders, what I feel is, have we given them that much space and trust? Have we built that trust for them to say no? And I think, as you said, biasness, we all have unconscious bias against them, but slowly, are we giving them, strength to say no, and why? Bring that why element, and then we are happy to listen and accept it. Sometimes we as leaders probably don't accept or don't want to accept the no. I think that's where we need to change ourselves, that attitude, so that
And you tend to form impression after the person has said no.
No.
The biasness exists. And we are in a world where the workforce is changing so rapidly now, in the last 2 years, than like 5 years back, 10 years back. And if we are not recognizing that, it's going to be a very difficult proposition.
For Gen Z, it's important to understand the why element, and for us as leaders to also hear that why and then not make unconscious bias.
The open to things. I mean, like even I take tech examples, but for somebody who's good in a particular kind of technology versus somebody who can interact with ChatGPT or do vibe coding are two different competencies. The second person may be far better nowadays, but if the mid management is not ready to adopt that.